Hello, and welcome to another vlog. Back in May, myself and a number of other members of the Nova Scotia Accessibility Advisory Board were interviewed by Accessible Media Inc. for an upcoming documentary about Nova Scotia's new accessibility legislation. Anyway, I found out this week that that documentary will be airing this Friday, July 20th at 8:30 p.m. on AMI, so tune in if you want to see that. Today, however, there is something else I'd like to talk about. I'd like to talk about my bucket list. Specifically, I wanted to share with you some of the things I'd like to experience, what challenges I'll face, and how I'll overcome those challenges. So let's get started. So the first item on my bucket list is to travel the world. Now, I've talked a lot on this series about how difficult it is for someone like me with limited mobility to travel on a plane. Um, Fortunately, there are a number of other modes of transportation. Um, and one in particular that stands out for me is cruise lines. The advantage to a cruise ship is essentially a hotel, a floating hotel. Um, and because of this, cruise lines are usually able to easily accommodate for people with disabilities before the cruise even starts. So someone with a disability could rent specific equipment that they might need, and they can have some of the activities on the cruise ship adapted to support their specific needs. And the advantage to traveling on a cruise ship isn't just the fact that they're so accessible for someone with a disability. The other advantage with a cruise ship is cruises tend to come with a number of experiences that you just don't get to enjoy when you fly on a plane. The cruise itself is its own experience. Um, and I think because of that, it would be a great way to kind of travel and visit new parts of the world in a way that is very comfortable. So that's the first item on my bucket list. The second item is to experience zero gravity. Now, most people, when they think about this, they think that you'd have to go to space. But the fact is, you can actually experience zero gravity on Earth. There are planes that essentially simulate this. They essentially fly along a parabolic flight path. So essentially, they go straight up and then they come straight down. And when they come straight down, that essentially simulates zero gravity. And this is something that I'm interested in doing specifically because it's something that Stephen Hawking did. Before that, it wasn't really something that was really on my radar because it just wasn't something that I really thought about or thought that I could do. But when I saw that someone like Stephen Hawking was able to experience something like that, I realized that there was no reason why I couldn't experience something like that as well. So I'm hoping someday I'll be able to go on one of these flights and experience that near zero gravity, just to kind of see what it feels like. I think it would be a very exciting, very memorable experience, and I think it would be something that would be very liberating in a lot of ways. Kind of like when someone with a disability, with limited mobility, goes into a pool, it kind of gives them a little bit more freedom to move around, and I think that's one of the advantages to that. So that's the next item on my bucket list. And the final item on my bucket list, of the main items anyway, the third item, is to go skydiving. And this is something that is kind of up in the air, no pun intended. Um, if I went skydiving, I think it's safe to say that I would probably be strapped to my instructor. Um, but even then, I still think that's going to require some amount of upper body strength, which I don't have. So that I think is going to be the biggest barrier to going skydiving. Perhaps there is a way to, overcome that challenge. I don't actually know. Um, because I'm not really an expert in this field, and I don't think that you can skydive in a chair, but maybe you can. It would certainly be something worth looking into, but it's not really something that I think I would be able to do, at least not at this point in my life. Perhaps if I was to regain some of that lost mobility, maybe going skydiving would be a possibility. But at this point in time, I don't think that's really something I'll be able to do, but it's still on my bucket list just in case I ever do get the chance to experience that. So those are the three main things on my bucket list, but then there's a couple honorable mentions. Another thing that I kind of like to try and do is maybe drive. Now, I know for most people this is a very trivial thing, especially if you already have your driver's license. But for someone like me with a physical disability who can't drive under normal circumstances, this is something that really kind of appeals to me, something that I'd like to do. Now, it is true that there are special controls that can be adapted for people with physical disabilities to allow them to drive. And some of those devices can be adapted for someone like me who has very little strength and dexterity. The problem is these controls tend to be very, very expensive. Um, we're talking like tens of thousands of dollars just to get your vehicle um, adapted. And sometimes they don't even adapt vehicles that are older than a certain number of years. If your vehicle is more than 5 or 10 years, oftentimes they won't even adapt them. So that's really the main challenge I face with driving. But those hand controls do exist, and with the eve of self-driving cars being among us, uh, perhaps driving is something that I will get to experience in the near future. And then the last thing is just to learn a new language. Right now, English is my first language, and I'm semi-fluent in French. I took French immersion, but I haven't really used those skills much in the last 5 to 10 years, so I've kind of lost some of that ability, but I still retain some of it. But I'd like to learn another language on top of that, because not only is knowing a second language a very useful skill to have, because it opens a lot of doors for you and can really be advantageous to you in other ways, especially if I was to go travel the world, like I said I wanted to do. Not to mention, learning a second language is good for your brain. It helps keep your mind sharp, which is great for your mental health, and just your overall health. So those are some of the advantages to learning a new language, and I think it would be cool to know another language on top of English and French. Um, I think it would be a great way to experience new cultures and to just really improve my skills as an individual. So that's really the five main things that are on my bucket list. So to recap, I want to travel the world, I want to experience zero gravity, I want to skydive, I want to drive, and I want to learn a new language. And like I said, some of these things may seem trivial to an able-bodied person, and some of them may seem nearly impossible. But I think it's important to have goals and to have dreams, and that's basically what this video was all about, was me sharing those items with you, the things that I'd like to experience throughout my life, and kind of talking about them from an accessibility standpoint. So I'm hoping that everyone enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see more videos, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to support us and help us to make more videos, be sure to support us on Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next week.